Well, good morning. Good afternoon. We're back to the Watch Dogs at noon every Saturday on our Black Media Network. I am Robert Bryant, and we have a new anchor to our team.
I am Shantae McLaughlin.
And tell us about yourself, Ms. Shantae. I know our viewers have seen you on other podcasts, and you even had your own show. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to this spot.
I like to do handstands. I like pink. No, just joking. I'm a mother. I'm an advocate. I have lived experience with mental health, mass incarceration, and homelessness. And I advocate around those causes. I ran council in East Point in 2021. I've worked in marketing and I've worked in marketing for about 20 plus years. I've worked with my own consulting company for the past 4 years now, and I have a couple of other companies, and
we're having some
Caucasian women's organization around nuclear war, and we launched the Black Liberation Caucus inside of that to hold them to have at least 2 people of color in each chapter to shift and shape the way that looks. And I don't know what else is there to tell.
No,
I have 2 missing children that I'm looking for as well inside of all of this,
which is the most important thing. And you know, I tell you this a lot, but you're also an awesome mom. So that is the number one priority. So today, this is actually a topic you developed, but we're talking about population resources and community growth. And so if you could kind of help us think through how did you get to this topic and kind of we can get the conversation started. We actually have one other co-host who will be joining us, so hopefully he will jump in about 12:30.
So what had me think about this topic was I was actually on the phone with someone, and at the time we both lived in predominantly black neighborhoods, and we looked up in the sky and we saw different streams, like three, four, five, six, just streams of white powder, white dust across the sky. And we were like, he said it. He lives about 15 minutes away from me at the time. And he said, they're so disrespectful. They don't care about our communities. They just poison us. And I said, what are you talking about? And then when I looked up, I saw like two more streams than what he saw. And it was clear as day. It was in the middle of the day, like 4 or 5 o'clock. And you could see the different streams of dust or powder or whatever across the sky. And it made me think about how they say that crack actually made it into our communities. And this topic, we were talking about the drugs and Father's Day and the deconstruction of the Black family and things like that, and how it really came after the war on drugs. And when I was thinking about these streams going up and thinking about China and population control there and just the overall, all of it all, it made me think that they're killing us just through environmental toxins and pollutions. We know that we have more landfills in our communities. We know that a lot of corporations were paid millions, close to billions of dollars to dispose of waste in our communities every day. And what do we do different? And I'm one of those people where in my later years in life, like when the intro of this was coming on, I was dancing. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm officially a cougar because I'm dancing to the Watch Dawgs introduction. And but it made me think about it made me think about it made me think about just the fact that we're just living in a different time right now.
Right.
Like we're concerned about, like I went to the grocery store and bread was $5 just for a loaf of bread. Like we're in a different time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. As you talk about that, I think a lot about what Tupac talked about in his lyrics and how long ago was that, and how that still rings true today. We continue to lose as a community. To your point, it's not just the pollution in the communities like Plant Vogel and Waynesboro, but it's the pollution in the conversation. It's the pollution in the segregation. Are we as a community going to be aware that now it is a civil war going on because we don't necessarily support the growth of the community because we let things like that get in the way. So I guess as I think through this topic, it's how do we answer the question, will our community ever be cohesive? Will we ever, you know, be like the communities that are oppressing us and rise up, understand our value, understand our worth, understand our economic power to kind of claim that power and that value we have in the community and in the overall construction of this nation. I mean, you look at it, our ancestors built, invented, and provided the foundation and the sustainability of this country. But now we're in a space, like you said, where we don't benefit from that. We don't even understand the royalty in which we are rooted in. And so, how do we get back on track? How do we understand that, as you said, the war on drugs was a war on Black folk, period?
It really was, because women incarcerated went up 700% in the last 20 years. 700% And I want to say the statistic is like 55% or 65% of those women incarcerated all have children under the age of 18. So when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, conversations like that. And I'm just grateful that my mother was a single mom, but a lot of conversations I didn't live in when I was growing up. Like, she kept a lot of conversations away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out about them later on in life. Made me a little upset. Made me want to go do something about them. But I think back to even looking at some of the kids where we might say, well, Doug, why are they 21 years old still in high school with us? And the reality is we don't know if they had a parent that was incarcerated or a parent living with mental health or what the situation was at home. And just because we weren't exposed to it, it doesn't mean that it wasn't taking place. So when we start talking about population resources and community growth, we have to also remember population resources is us working together as a community and working together collectively to make sure that no one's being left behind. Not Bush's No Child Left Behind. That was part of the anti-drug thing. That was part of them going into houses and looking at single parent households and trying to figure out where dad or uncle is and if the child's witnessed anyone being killed and who did it and whatever. That was just part of mass incarceration. And it's like the war on drugs really wasn't about drugs to me.
Exactly.
Because if it were, we wouldn't be mass manufacturing drugs. Like, I'm convinced fentanyl is mass manufactured from the government, just like crack cocaine was, just like methamphetamine was in the 20s or 30s, and they messed it up, shipped it over to the Czech Republic, and it became crocodile, which is now starting to show up in the U.S. again, which is a drug that's made from gasoline and lighter fluid and things like that, and it literally turns your skin into your skin looks like a crocodile, and you burn from the inside out. So people are in pain, people are hurting, and we have people capitalizing off of this instead of people healing and people working through trauma and people working through whatever they need to work through. And as a community, we just can't afford to leave anyone behind in the conversation of healing. Instead of talking about people, instead of gossiping about people, instead of adding to the hurt, we have to start adding to the healing.
No, what I was thinking about when you were talking about that, if we go back to when Harriet Tubman was liberating, helping free slaves, helping to show a vision of the other side. And, we all know the story, the Underground Railroad, and if you didn't participate or if you hesitated, what would happen? It's very similar to that now in the fact that we have those who want to be conductors like yourselves who advocate, and you have those who want to tear up the railroad. And I think in the latter part, it's why tear up the railroad. For example, we talked about this a moment ago. We can choose to advocate, take time from our schedule, stop our family life, stop our own personal life to advocate for those who may not have a voice. But there's the other side to that. When we choose not to do that, when we choose to jump into the critical piece of the whole conversation, and it's how does that advance us? So I say all that to say, what I find interesting is when we are not understanding that when I come into a space and I have the choice to advocate or to make the situation worse by, promoting rumors, by doing all of the negative things, that impacts the entire community. But more so, what it tells me is we are a community that still doesn't understand what we bring to this table. We don't necessarily have to go outside of our community to find resources to grow what we have going on. But what I hope we do a better job of is realizing that again we stand upon a foundation which our ancestors built alone. And I think when we take things like CRT out of the class, well, it's not in the classroom, but when we allow people like DeSantis and others to remove our history, to make us stop talking about the struggles, make us stop talking about the advances we have made as a people, we forget that why am I doing this again? So, for example, it's an interesting conversation because it's almost like the things that John Lewis and so many others fought for. We're missing the impact. I think, or not thinking about it at least.
I agree. I agree. And I also know that I'm tired of being in the struggle and I'm tired of fighting. Like I'm so sick and tired of my case. Like a dead doc stays on your record for a year. Mine have been on for 6, going on 7 years. Like tired of talking to lawyers. Tired of
Mm,
recreating a story, because every time that I recreate it, I relive it,
mm-hmm,
and I keep being triggered. I keep living inside of the trauma, and I'm tired of being angry. I'm
mm-hmm.
tired of being angry. And I think that oftentimes with the conversation about the struggle and the movement and the resistance and things like that, there's a lot of anger that comes with it. And how do we move past that? Not saying how do we forget, because
Right.
those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. I can't recall who said that, but that's a famous quote. Um, but how do we move forward? Like, how do I move forward and live my best life knowing I got 2 missing children out there? Do I go fly to Colombia and look at every little child that looks like they could be related to me
Mm,
and question if that's Malcolm and Melina? You know, but I also don't get any reprieve or relief, um, struggling to pay my bills with the 2 kids that I have, because I'm calling out everybody and being blackballed every 2 seconds and losing contracts, and now in fight or flight mode.
mm-hmm. Wow. That wow. I don't know how to answer that. What I would hope is, and what I think would be nice, if we have developed a system where, in that case, we could look at each other. I'll use the institution of faith and the church as that kind of framework. That's supposed to be a place where, in times of confusion, misunderstanding, or just trying to find your way, you could go and find reprieve. I'm not sure if that's still the case. Uh, but where do we go when we face challenges? Where is the community? Is there a community, and how do we navigate
Yeah.
that?
And
Um,
and I think with the church, like we talk about population resources and community growth, but the church has become a hindrance because everybody's worried about their church community growth, church numbers, and they're not worried about community. They're not worried about being the church beyond the walls. They want to have the shiniest and the best and everything inside of that building. But what about the population that you have sitting inside?
mm,
Like, have we lost sight of that? Have we lost sight of just being a human being? You know,
mhm,
like, none of us wake up perfect, and none of us are getting out of this thing called life alive. And we're definitely not going to do it perfect.
mhm.
So, when do we give up righteousness and allow people to just be human? And when do we allow ourselves just to be human?
Well, I don't think that's a thing anymore. In my opinion, I think we have, when we were younger, we would see our parents and how they navigated spaces and interacted with people, and everything was perfect, was great then. And now that we are in the time of, you know, on the brink of war and countries invading one another, um, this thing called civil discourse is absent. It's to a time now where it's winner take all. There's not this both and approach to things, and honestly, and I hope I'm wrong on this particular case. It's how do we one up, or how do we use and leverage information in a way that I can win, you can lose, and at the end of the day, what does that? Why does that matter? Uh, it goes back to what you said. Are we? At to what point do we forget that we're human? I don't even think we think about that anymore. When you can, um, when you can be a leader and sit behind closed doors and not advocate or understand that making this particular decision will hurt a community, will displace a family, and yet you miss that whole process in the decision, it really makes me think about what are we doing now? We're losing everything we have. We're losing our communities. We're losing our understanding of what it means to be a Black family or a Black um, community. And so I don't know. It's really interesting because I don't know the question can ever be answered. Will we ever be a cohesive unit? Will we ever work together? Will we even value what we are as a people?
But would you call that leadership? Or
Not
would
at
it
all.
be dictatorship? Or would it be being a boss
Well,
or a CEO or whatever title? But
I was getting kind of shut in.
one of the languages is in leadership.
Mhm.
Just because someone has a title, it doesn't make them a leader.
Right. It's almost like individual development. So, as individuals, hopefully we self reflect and we will still hit speed bumps and we self reflect and we grow. Um, I think there's a cultural identity piece that is not often thought about.
Right.
And I'm sorry.
I just said right. Agreeing
Yeah.
with you.
And I think that's a missing piece. It's, for example, you have people like Dr. King and Malcolm X. If you didn't have one, would the other one be successful? So what I mean by that is you had the peaceful person and you had the one who was like by any means necessary. But yet you had people in the community say, "Oh, look at that Martin guy. We don't want him to come here because he's a troublemaker." Well, how do you know? And who are you to get to place value upon that individual? But we also hear now the other side of his extramarital affairs or what he had going on. Why does that matter? And I often say to people, a leader basically leads in a space when they're supposed to, but we can't expect that to be a 24/7 thing. And so, we do we step into the idea of you know what's best for us, or do we step into the idea of what's best for us, but and by the way, let me show you these deficits so that I can discredit the work that's going on. In that case, guess what? The discredit's going to take a hold because the media loves what? A good story. So we hear more about that and less about the good stuff and the movement that really matters.
Well, the media is equally responsible for a lot of the plight that takes place in our communities. And now social media. And now they're trying to ban TikTok. And they're probably trying to ban that because of all of the wealthy people, the people who have been able to attain wealth from singing, dancing, pop locking. Um, and there's a lot of good information that you find on some of these social media outlets that you can research and trace
Mhm.
back to truth, um, that normally wouldn't be able to be out there and have the light shed on it.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I just think I know for myself, every day I'm getting lighter energy wise. Um, so someone asked me to write something the other day. They were like, I need to be more black and militant. And I
They don't know
guess,
you.
well, because I believe in the Malcolm X philosophy more than Martin Luther King. Like, I don't know if I could sit at a counter and have people smash food in my face without me wanting to punch somebody in the face. So I'm the Malcolm X philosophy, by any means necessary. If you come for me, we gonna do this. That might be why I have pending felonies. But
No, that's called a system that, yeah, that's a whole nother topic. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a system that wants us to be and to not fight back and to be railroaded and to be victims. And when we fight back, we become the angry black woman or the angry black man. And then we become part of that population of 700% of black women who have been incarcerated, right? Because our society says that we're supposed to behave a certain kind of way. Our society says if you're a light skinned woman, when white people come around, you're supposed to behave this way. Or you're supposed to be, if you got high cheekbones and slanty eyes and your nationality is questionable, you're supposed to be somebody's football player, basketball player's wife. Like we
Yeah.
brought into a lot of BS stereotypes through the years, um, as a society and as a culture, and we've started normalizing the foolishness and the buffoonery. And when other cultures laugh at us, we don't know why. And it's because we're laughable. We become a word that I know that I would be in real trouble if I used it that starts with a C. But
Mm. And
but
it's like a little animal.
we become animals. And
Yeah.
that's how we're described sometimes, as animals. And we've allowed that to set in. But I tell you this, if a war breaks out, I'm just gonna catch another aggravated assault charge. Because by any means necessary. We ain't going out this thing. I tell everybody, if a war breaks out, if civil war breaks out, I'm going to Detroit. That's where my family's originally from.
You'll be good. You will be good. Listen.
I'm good
That's
in
Chicago.
Detroit.
Wow. As you were talking about that, we're really in a cultural civil war. I find it disheartening that, you and I talk about this a lot off the show. It's, are we supposed to be supportive, or are we supposed to be, um what's the word I'm looking for? Negative to one another. What benefit is it to offer compassion? What benefit is it to offer love? What benefit is it to offer care? I think that's the word I'm looking for, care. How do we care? Do we even care? Why should we care? Um, you know, you and I talk about our own struggles, and I think what we have lost sight of from generations like from my mom and dad's era is this idea of caring for the next person. You can sit here all day and create the narrative you want. And you can sit here all day and highlight all of Robert's issues or Shantae's things and all that. But at the end of the day, why does it matter? And at the end of the day, it shows me that as an individual, when you do those things, if you don't care enough about making sure we advance as a community, do you even really care about your own self? Because at the end of the day, you know this as well as I do. If I'm in a deficit, or you're going to, come help me out, whatever that may look like. If you're in a deficit, I try to do the same thing. But it's not good, and I use this term a lot. You've heard me say this. If I'm over here eating, what does it look like if this next person sitting right next to me is hungry and have nothing? It's our job to make sure, especially in our community, when we have people that come into our neighborhoods and make money off of us. We live in a system where they make sure that economically and politically we are excluded. And yet we add more fuel to the fire by making sure I highlight all of, Kamala Harris's wrongdoings, or what Kamala couldn't do, or what Barack Obama did not do for the Black community. It's stepping into a conversation that supports the good things, and it's stepping into that idea of care. And when that is missing, we all lose. And at the end of the day, I don't know how we got here. How did we get here?
Well, I think it goes back to, I oftentimes talk about the water cooler employees, the employees who stand around the water cooler, who don't do anything. They're not really trying to advance themselves, their careers, but they enjoy talking about the CEO. And the
Hmm.
CEO is the one who's responsible for cutting their checks and making sure that them and their families eat every week. And that's leadership. Barack Obama, Biden, Harris, no matter who we say that's in a leadership role, what's there is they're in a leadership role. So either we support them or we don't, but they are in a leadership role. So how we communicate that support, with you running for city council, fifth district, either we support you or we don't. And how we communicate that support says a lot about us and how we view ourselves as leaders or lack thereof. You know, am I trying to tear you down as a way of building you up? That's the most BS backwards approach. Like, who needs to be torn down to be built up, right? And you and I, people see us lovey-dovey these days, but we haven't always gotten along, and we've been great friends. We'll have dragged out who you gonna pull off the other one arguments, and but the reality is, at the end of end of the day, you know that I care about you, and I know that you care about me,
Right.
and I know that we're friends. And part of friendship, I just had this conversation. Part of friendship isn't necessarily having the same perspective in every
Right.
situation. And if I can't disagree with you and have an opinion of my own, then are we really friends? Am I
Mhm.
being heard? Am I in a dictatorship, or am I in a relationship? And a lot of people collapse the two. They act as if you don't agree with everything that I say, then we're not friends because we have one disagreement. No, we might
Mhm.
have another disagreement. Who's going to say I was wrong?
Right.
Let's rectify the situation so that we can get along. As a community, white people do that all the time, especially in matters of money. White people will hate each other. They will go through divorces and still do business with each other, their husbands and wives. They'll be in whole marriages living in two separate rooms. And then when we ask questions like, well, why are they so far advanced economically? And the first thing that we want to default to is slavery. Well, guess what? That generational conversation got passed down, and not saying that they weren't set up for a good situation, but it's not just about how much money you have. Even Oprah says it's how much money you keep. And so
Mhm.
it's like, if you don't have the tools to keep your money, then who are you really serving? You're serving money. Money's
Mhm.
your God. You're not serving for the freedom that it brings.
Right.
So as a culture, like, I'm big on, I'm not helpless even when I'm struggling. You heard me use the term struggling,
Mhm.
because before this I said I have to get myself out of this conversation of struggle, because
Right.
as long as I'm in the struggle, as long as I'm in the fight, it's going to impact every area of my life. Law of attraction, law of manifestation, quantum physics, osmosis, whatever you want to say, it doesn't know anything different. It's going to mesh to your DNA. Maslow's hierarchy of success. It's going to mesh to your DNA based off of the language that we're using and what's coming out of our mouth.
Mhm.
It doesn't know fact from fiction. So we create all of that. And as a community, and even with the population control, like, are we having these kinds of conversations with each other? Hey, Carlton.
Hey there.
Good evening, good afternoon.
Welcome. Welcome. So, Shantae, you want to finish your thought, and then we'll have him introduce himself.
Sure. So I
Right.
was just saying, like, law of attraction and manifestation doesn't know the difference between what we're saying to it, ourselves, the world, the universe, our chromosomes, our DNA. It meshes according to whatever we say, period. And as a community, they always say, if you want to keep something from a Black person, where do you put it? In a book.
In a
And
book.
it's not just because of the fact that there's information and data in a book, there's also language in a book. And if we keep dumbing ourselves down to these basic remedial books, we're going to keep having remedial lives and lifestyles instead of expanding ourselves, expanding our vocabularies, instead of being, she uses all those big words so often. Well, maybe you should pick up a dictionary and learn some big words,
All right.
because that's what shapes our culture and our conversation and our lives.
That and Carlton, we'll have you introduce yourself, but really quick, Shantae, that made me think about the Du Bois Washington um, comparison and the conversation they had. Mr. Carlton, if you could tell us who you are, and we'll keep the conversation going after that.
Well, brief. Well, I don't really know. That's kind of a difficult conversation. There's a lot about me that I would like to say, but who knows what I really want to say today. But my name is Carson Carter. I'm a local. I've been in Savannah for like the past 12 years. I'm not technically from here, but I've been here long enough to be classified as being from here.
All right.
That's all I
All
have to say
right.
about it.
That
Well, where are
works.
you
That works.
from?
Small town of the county of Scriven, small town of Savannah.
Oh, I know who Scriven County
Mhm.
is.
All right. So, Carlton, we are talking about population resources and community growth. And so you can respond to that or to Shantae's statement, but we'll give you a space to kind of jump in here.
Repeat that. because I'm trying not to crash into nobody while I'm driving.
Uh
Yeah, we don't want that to happen.
oh.
So population, resources, and community growth.
He's talking about population control. He's trying not to crash into anybody.
Right.
I mean, as far as like community growth, I mean, Savannah is steadily growing. It's just not growing in the way towards our community. I will say that. It's more so focused on eradicating what is left of our community here in the Savannah Chatham area. Genuinely, I feel like in the next 5 to 10 years, all the areas that currently like you running for the fifth district won't be the fifth district anymore. It will be completely palm colored.
I like what you just said. Pump up. Okay. Well, and that's interesting. Going back, if I take your idea and Shantae's concept of, put it in a book, you know, the plan is right there on the internet. It's called the NPC Plan 2040, and it shows you images of what you just said, Carlton. Uh, Instead of, and Shantae, you said, why can't we just stop the ridicule and all the negative things? Instead of taking a moment to go look at things that might be a hindrance to our community, that might get your grandma or family member or cousin or whatever displaced, we place more time in the negative things. And it's to our own detriment. Like you said, Carlton, in about probably 20 years, if things go the way that they're going now currently, this whole area will be part of what's called an extended downtown. But again, it's in a book, so we're not going to go get it, and we're not going to understand it because we don't care. So I don't know what that means for you all, but it matters. It matters because this thing called community is more than just us as individuals. It's the little lady over here who is living in poverty, but is on a fixed income, and now she can't pay her property tax, so she loses. It's about the single mom who has two children, but she has to work two jobs. So when we think about community and we put that word individualistic in it, I don't even know if we're even thinking about that. But it matters more than just what's going on in front of us at that moment.
Agreed.
I mean, I'm gonna say if we have a quick history lesson, the strength of the black community and the black household was the family unit. So what did we allow ourselves to do? We allow ourselves to destroy the family unit. We don't like our aunties and our cousins because our aunties and our cousins got an opinion. So we decide, we're not gonna talk to them. We're gonna alienate them. But in all actuality, the black community, if it actually came together, it would be a force to be reckoned with.
So, Carlton, are you talking about me with just meet me in 5 minutes because I am the petty committee? Like, I don't like this person. I'm not talking to them forever.
Oh no, cause don't feel bad because I got family members who I don't talk to, and I'm like, I don't like you, and I tell them to their face, and I walk away. We just not gonna deal with you.
But this is the thing. Do you believe that family is who you are birthed into, or family is who you create?
It's a bit of both, because that statement that blood is thicker than water is not always true, because I genuinely have friends that I met like when I was an undergrad that they're my sisters, and when I have kids, if I have kids, those will be my kids' aunts, and I'll be like, and I have to explain to my kids, don't ask me how we relate. We not related to them. It's just accept them as your aunties and your uncles.
That's my surrogate, and we ain't never
right. But let me go.
My kids even look like Robert.
Hush up. Let me go to this. I'm glad you said that. Aren't we supposed to be all brothers and sisters in Christ? Aren't we? Look at that.
In this conversation, can I say I'm Muslim even though I'm not?
Well, even then, aren't we supposed to can't we all just get along?
Well, what I'll say, this is what I'll say, that one of my biggest takeaways in life. If you spot it, you got it. I do a lot of mirror work, and whatever I say that I don't like about somebody is something that I'm saying I don't like about myself. So what I do is I explore and examine, what about this person don't I like? What about this family member has me not want to be around them? Where am I being that kind of person? Because if you don't identify, try the spirit by the spirit. It's another saying. If you don't identify it, then how can you relate to it if you don't have it in you? It's in you too. And it just may come out in a different area of life and in a different area of self-expression. But I have boundaries today. So just because I can see some past behavior of mine that I choose to eliminate, to change, because I'm conscious, I'm woke, and I'm aware, and I may have family members who choose to be asleep and sleepwalking, they can be where they are. I have to be where I am. And it's just me exercising healthy boundaries to say, I choose to not participate in this relationship, this conversation. I choose not to put myself around people who belittle me, who degrade me. And then I have to look, where am I belittling myself? Where am I degrading myself? Where am I allowing myself to be belittled? Where am I allowing myself to be degraded? But it's a
I will
choice.
always have the I will always have the philosophy that if you need me, call me. Because just because I don't see eye to eye with you at all points of time, or we're not speaking at this point in time, I still have a heart. So I will alienate you to keep my peace. But I also know that I'm not gonna just say I'm just not gonna abandon you. You may have did something that was genuinely jacked up. But if you call me and say, hey, I'm having a really hard time, I need you to come through for me. If it's within my will, if it's within my power, and it's not going to cause me to go lacking, I will do it. I'll help.
Oh, you good, Carlton, because I'm Deuces. Call the crisis management line.
She says that, but no. But
Robert, you know me well enough to know, yes.
Well, you do have a list. All of the list is short.
But I am that person where if I'm loyal to a fault. I live by that saying of don't let your loyalty be your slavery, because I'm a slave to loyalty sometimes. Like, I will stay loyal to a fault. And I forgive people because of grace. And I also ask for permission to be forgiven when I know that I've done something wrong. And sometimes pettiness, because I'm a petty person, and that's just me acknowledging who I am. I will look at something and say, you know what, that was very petty of me. Why did we stop being friends when we were 15? I apologize for that. When I said this, did it harm you? How did it make you feel? And that's also because I got a bunch of certifications and stuff around psychiatry and things like that too. So I live in that space of how are my words and my actions impacting other people? Because I look at how often I've been taken out the game of life because of others' words and actions towards me. And I never want to make someone feel that way. And if I feel that that's what I'm doing, no matter if we have the same perspective or not, because, people will be left, all the way left. But it's not for me to make them be me. They don't have to be my clone to live and exist in this thing called life or the world or the planet. They're supposed to be who they are. So
and in that, using that whole concept, how does that impact growth, or does it?
It impacts my personal growth, and it impacts allowing people the freedom to be who they really are. Because if we look at the conversation that you just brought up about Jesus Christ, or even try the spirit by the spirit, or any of those things, like, who God created you to be is not who God created me to be. That's why we have all of this flavor and uniqueness and differences and everything else. And how you move, how you operate isn't necessarily how I move and how I operate, because we're not clones. Even twins aren't clones. And so if I allow you the freedom and the grace to be who you are, hopefully you'll allow me the freedom and grace to be who I am. And then we can use our unique talents and gifts for the dash. I'm a big fan of the dash. Why were you put on this planet? That dash between when you were born and when you're going to die.
And you said, you know what, if we realize that you have a skill, Carlton has a skill, I have a skill, and we have all these resources, pull them together, what that means for growth. And I think far too often we just miss that entire conversation for better or worse, for the sensationalism of the other side. Or what can we get by making sure that we divide and conquer? The system of slavery was about dividing and conquering. But you know what's so interesting? We will ignore that part. We will ignore the fact that the slave owner raped the slave, and but yet we will miss the whole point that our community is being impacted, hurt, and disregarded, but yet we're following and walking in rules and in a system that was created by the oppressor. So I just find it as an interesting, you know, comparison. And I don't know, what do y'all think?
I mean,
Carlton, would you like to tackle it?
we crabs in a barrel. That's the easiest way to say it. Nobody don't want
Okay.
to see nobody else get more than them. And like she said about that growth statement earlier about how we deal with people, we will be friends with somebody and we'll be just like this up until the point where I start achieving a level of growth that they either can aspire to, or either that they're just not trying to get to, or either that they haven't got to yet, and they feel the utmost need to try and drag me back down to where they are in order for them to feel like we can still maintain a relationship with each other.
But that's a good point. You know, when I was sitting in Narcotics Anonymous, a 12-step meeting, even though I've never done drugs, I had a sponsor tell me, she said, Shantae, you keep getting upset with people because they don't help you.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine that your bottom is a place that most people will never see?
Mm.
And when I started thinking about that, I started realizing that, and it lightened me up again because it took away some of the anger. Like, everybody's not ambitious. Everyone doesn't want to do all of these things that, like, I don't even sleep. I don't even know when I sleep.
That's
And
true.
everyone doesn't want to live that life, but it's a choice that I choose. We all choose our lives, whether we mean to or not, but we choose our lives. And when we start thinking about the crabs in the barrel syndrome, we need to think about the fact that sometimes people can only want for you what they can see for themselves. And in their efforts of loving you, they may seem like they're trying to be that cinder block on your ankle and pull you down, but that's their own fear talking. Fear runs
Mhm.
more people than faith. And we talk about the Bible, we talk about Christianity, we talk about being a Muslim, we talk about Buddhism, we talk about all these different religions, but people are ran by fear. Fear is what has you get up every morning and go to that job that you don't want to be on because you need to pay them bills. Fear is what has you in that relationship with that man or woman who whooping your butt every day because you don't want to be alone. Fear is what has you go to school and get all of these degrees because you don't want to seem stupid. Fear is what has me do all of these crazy things with these kids. I'm always doing something to get mommy of the year because I'm scared I'm gonna mess them up. You know, like, my biggest thing is I don't want to F you up in life because there's no
Mhm.
manual that comes with parenting,
Yeah.
but it's all fear based. So when do we replace it with faith? And how do we replace it with faith? And it's a conversation that we're not taught, because the truth of the matter is our parents raised us off of fear of making sure that we made it
Hmm.
all right, fear of making sure that we had everything that they wanted for us, you know, instead of just a faith base, like a thrival space instead of a survival. I raised my black boys out of fear. They're so coddled, and my fear is them being a statistic.
Hmm.
And so my 18-year-old will probably be home until he's 40. Um,
I doubt that.
if I had my way, just because I'm scared of what the real world has to offer him. So
But
fear
you
will
know
have us do some things.
that statistics statement, that was the one thing that I always grew up on. Like,
Mhm.
once I graduated high school and I started to get up on my own, I always told myself that I would never be a statistic, that nobody else would never ever classify me in that category.
And
That's
I
why
said
you
the
say,
same
like, I
thing, and I've been every statistic there is to be. I've been the
Well,
pregnant teenager. I've been the suicidal teenager. I've been the Black Latina ex. I've been mass incarceration. I've been homeless. I've been um, 2 seconds away from prostitution. I've been every statistic that there is to be because of the fear of being that. So the reality is, we have to peel back our fears. And I'm all right with being a statistic. I want to be a one percenter. That's where I'm looking at. I am going to be a one percenter as a statistic, and I am okay being that statistic.
But if I
It's all
could,
a statistic.
who gets to create the measuring stick? Who created those statistics? It certainly
So
wasn't it wasn't our community. So
It wasn't.
it wasn't. And I keep thinking, why do we walk in a system that wasn't designed for us, that wasn't ever in our corner, and we will step out of our community to buy into that system, and we continue to lose as a community. So again, who creates this measuring stick of success when we can create our own? So for
you
example,
see,
I'll use the marijuana law. It's so interesting to me how all of a sudden, after all these black men and women are placed in incarceration, now all of a sudden there's benefits to marijuana. So then, why didn't we realize that years ago? And you know my advocacy on that. I'm very clear about that. And what happens is we as a community bought into that whole concept, that ideology, this is bad, when it really never was. And so we gotta, I think as a community, my personal opinion, we gotta step out of what we have been conditioned to believe and understand that we can create our own knowledge, we can create our own meaning to things. But at the end of the day, we gotta stop being deconstructive or negative to who we are as a people. It's why we don't gain, it's why we don't have reparations. That's
Let
the
me
real
tell you
reason.
something.
We don't have
I
reparations because we don't want it.
I believe in drugs. I take drugs to keep me sane. My 30-day supply of my mental health bipolar meds costs $2,500 for a 30-day supply. That is some white man, big pharma, Pfizer, and Rockefeller created big pharma back in the day, and we have what we have today. Now, Junebug and Ray Ray, if they want to cook some crack in the bluff, and although I don't support cooking crack in the bluff, if they want to cook some crack in the bluff, they're going to be looking at spending the rest of their life in prison. Guess what? They say it's because it depreciates the amount of time that we're going to be on this planet every time we consume some of the crack that Junebug and Ray Ray cook. But my mental health medicine depreciates my lifetime by 25 years. Statistically, that's what it says. That's what the warnings are. That people who take mental health medicine live 25 years less than
Mm.
people who don't. So what's the difference? I don't understand it. I don't understand why people are going to prison for cocaine and for crack and for things like this for their entire lifetimes. Why aren't there entrepreneurship diversion programs? Why aren't there drug treatment diversion programs that are put in place that actually work instead of people going to drug court or people sitting in a 12-step meeting that may or may not have ever done a drug? Like, what is the real big difference? The fact that they had the means to incorporate and to put an EIN number and a LLC, S Corp, C Corp, now a B Corp, or whatever kind of corp that they decided to create a pharmaceutical company and call it an experimental drug. They had the means and they went to school for pharmaceutical sales instead of standing on the corner selling pharmaceuticals to be able to afford some Air Force Ones. There ain't that big of a difference to me. I don't see the difference. And I get a lot of slack, because back in my day I used to like me a little drug dealer. But I catch slack for that all the time because I don't see the difference. I see entrepreneurship. I see our community come together when they start spreading money. I see jobs created. I see the plight, but I also see the advantage. And I'm going to always stand behind drug reform laws because we have too many brown and black people sitting in prison over drugs when white people work for pharmaceutical companies every day, whites and Asians, and they benefit off of us dying using these same drugs.
Well, the question then is, again, who gets to make the rules, who benefits from the rules, and who loses? It's the same thing every day.
You
I
know, I
think,
want to respond to what you
yeah.
said, your statement earlier when you said who created the measurement. And genuinely, who created the measurement was Lake Lanier, the town of Oscarville,
Mm.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. All these great, thriving black communities that were destroyed because they were just simply existing and doing their own thing and they didn't want to be a part of the system. I'm going to ask y'all a question before you continue. And it's a question I love to ask a lot of other people to see their standpoint is, do you feel like if schools were never integrated, would black people be farther?
I will. I think I would say yes and no. And this is coming. My bias is that I do this diversity work stuff. I think there's benefit to being integrated. There is a richness that comes to the conversation, but there's also a piece that misses, and that is our own identity as a people. And this is how that shows up. You can take all your moments to identify all of my deficits and all the things, but when I do advocate and when I'm in a space of making some decisions, when I'm in a space of being in a room, it's that voice, that it's that advocacy that helps you to benefit. See, I think so often, Shante, we were talking about this earlier. When you do go in these rooms and when you have these conversations, we all win from that. But if I sit
Right.
here and I criticize you and I highlight all of your issues and now you discredit it, we all lose. We do some of the most backyard foolishness. And at the end of the day, I can tear Shante down all day. I mean, I feel good about that. But guess what? Somebody's going to lose from that. And it's going to be somebody that looks like us. And so I think there's a benefit, but I also think there's a cost to all of this. We do not understand that at the end of the day, tearing down the next person, hurting the cause hurts everyone. And I think that's the part, that I get baffled about often. So what you think, Shantae?
Well, being a person of color that went to an all white school until I was 12 years old and until I got introduced to Savannah, Georgia. So when I heard that my mother was military, and when I heard that we were moving to Savannah, I thought about Gone with the Wind. I was like, are they going to have those big old dresses on? We moved from maybe Michigan. I went to a school called Dundee, and the only other people in the school who looked like me were related to me. And I was the only black girl in my grade every single year until I was 12. But I knew that I was black. The conversation that I was missing was I didn't realize there was a conversation about being black and Puerto Rican. I didn't know that conversation until I moved to Savannah. And I really wasn't present to it until I was about 30 years old, honestly. I didn't know it was even a conversation of being Puerto Rican and black because we weren't taught to talk about colorism or to talk about race at all because my uncles and aunts range in the color spectrum from being lighter than me to being darker than my hair. And they have the same two parents. So we weren't allowed to talk about the color of each other's skin. And it wasn't anything taboo for one of my uncles to bring home a white girlfriend or a Mexican girlfriend or an Asian girlfriend because it was okay and tolerated. But to go back to your conversation about I'm about to be called a racist, which I often get called a racist. My family gets upset with me because I'm the only one in the family that doesn't date outside of my culture. And I will say yes. The answer is yes. I believe in the W.E.B. Du Bois philosophy, not the Booker T. Washington philosophy. W.E.B. Du Bois is separate but equal. Martin Luther King says separate but equal. Nobody says segregation. And I think that with segregation, we've lost a lot of our culture. And that comes down to them at Duran when they would bust us into the hood. Like, I was traumatized in middle school, going to Duran Middle School, where my mother worked to live in a certain neighborhood so that I could go to a certain school. And then one day they decided they're going to bus us in to an all black school. She probably was more traumatized than me because somewhere in there I found my voice and I found my culture and I saw people who looked like me, and it made it okay to be vocal and to be black and to stand on being vocal and black. And then Windsor was just a melting pot of every kind of culture that there was in every socioeconomic group. So it really brought it home and brought in a diversity piece. But I'm I'm hoping I'm answering your question. We we really lost the ability to say I'm Black and I'm proud, because when you say I'm Black and I'm proud, people think that means that you're supposed, like, I think that a white person should be white. I think an Asian person should be Asian and proud, or brown and proud. I don't see a problem with loving yourself, but as long as, if my love means that I hate you, then we got a problem. But me being Black and loving the skin that I'm in as a Black woman, that should be something to be reveled, not to be feared. And it's feared. And so I think that it hurt our community. Gentrification hurt our community.
And it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It's funny you say that, because we don't get to gentrify communities. Y'all ever think about that? We don't get to go on and just.
Yes, we do. Your FICO score gonna drop as soon as we move in.
But we don't. So what I mean by that is,
you changed the whole conversation.
I agree. Well, look
Becky
at
just started dating little Budapest.
Look at communities like Charleston. When it got gentrified, where did we go? So we didn't get to do that. We didn't get any businesses out of that.
They got moved to the outskirts. That's what happened.
So
we gentrified communities. We gentrified Clayton County. Why I had to move from Clayton County.
Did we get dislocated to Clayton?
No, I gentrified to Clayton because of dislocation. They closed down the projects and moved all the Black people from the projects in Atlanta to Clayton County, and then the white people started moving into the city, which is gentrification.
But
into those houses.
Have you ever seen it the other way around? Do we get to move white folks out of their communities? And
yes, we do. We move white people out of their community. It's called lower FICO scores, because your FICO is
come on, in a mass manner.
We do, and it is.
I'm telling you,
when white people move into a Black neighborhood, it starts to increase the value. But when Black people move into a predominantly white neighborhood, it lowers the value. And what they tend to do is they allow that area. They won't give the funding to help maintain it. The houses start to get more decrepit, and then eventually the process starts all over again. It's a cycle.
Yeah, that's it.
And your children's school ratings are a 2. Like, I am so challenged with this right now, looking for schools for my son. Like, why are the ratings 2 out of 10? Like, is that even possible? When does the district step in? Like, why are there 2 out of 10? And that's a high rating for some of these communities to have a 2 out of 10, unless it's a private school or a private charter school.
Can you explain to me what you mean by 2 out of 10?
Yes. So schools have ratings up to 10. When you start looking for properties to either purchase or rent, you can see the school rating, and it rates the elementary, middle, and high school. And it literally is like, for a lot of these neighborhoods in Atlanta, it's like a 2 out of 10 or 1.6 out of 10. That's the rating on a 10. Yeah. Because of the schools, just the overall school itself. The education rating.
Now you got me curious. I got to actually look at what school is actually attending to see what's the comparison.
Neighborhoods that I can't afford right now, but I'm getting there. I'm gonna get there. By the time I get there, my kids gonna be looking at me like, "Mom, you don't work 5 jobs to get us here."
But I will tell you, I did learn about Savannah School District is that recently they have just started to try to put all the kids in each school on the same curriculum. For years, they were not on the same curriculum. If you lived in a predominantly Black neighborhood, you were in a different. The kids got a different curriculum versus the ones who live out on the more predominant areas.
So that's not. I need to hear more about that, because I have a mixed view on that. Like, I don't know if everyone needs to be on the same curriculum, meaning we don't account for lived experience enough in our education system. And when we don't account for lived experience and for socioeconomics and things like that, we set people up to be left behind. We start introducing them to conversations and topics that they'll never use in their life. And just because you have 5 people out of 30 who might go off to college and it changed their life, what about the other 25 who got left behind in a conversation that was too complex because it started off as being an obsolete conversation? But the other side of it is you have to be able to expose people to a conversation that they've never heard of before for growth to take place. So I don't know how I feel about that, because some, like a lot of the stuff that I've learned through the years, I'm okay with unlearning it. Like, I don't even understand why it ever rented space in my head. Like, why did I learn this? Like, I don't need to learn this. And there's Black history, which a lot of the kids coming from more socioeconomics were introduced more to Black history.
For the 4 weeks.
But at least they got 4 weeks. Some of us didn't get 4 weeks.
But
we got soul food. My mom cooked on Sundays. I already knew what soul food was.
No, I get that. And I think I want to add to the conversation is who got to set that curriculum? We don't talk enough about our culture in the classroom, and they don't allow it. And now they're even banning the little bit we do have. And I have a problem with that. It's, why can't our children learn about, the success they come from? Why can't we learn about us? And I don't think we do a good job of that in any school district. And I think that's problematic. So going back to your conversation, did segregation help? Maybe a little bit in that regard, but why can't we have just as much conversation about our culture as we talk about Christopher Columbus?
Why do we talk about Christopher Columbus? Why don't we talk about him being a murderer and a rapist and everything else? Why don't we have those conversations?
Being a deplorable individual all together. Christopher Columbus pillaged, brought disease, conquered, did all this, that, and the third to prove a point. I mean, it's still the continuous one. I lost my train of thought by something you were saying earlier that I meant to tie it into. But Christopher Columbus actually was a horrible person, and that's genuinely why it's called Indigenous People Day now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, no, and why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about the fact that we all have some American Indian? I got my cheekbones, and I think I have 25% to qualify for my Native American reservation card, which I need to go push that envelope and see.
You know what?
I'm serious. I'm telling the truth. But
you can actually count. I can actually count back to who was the pure blood Indian in our family, and it doesn't actually go back that far.
Right. And that's a Native American card where you, as long as you can show 25% American Indian, you get a reservation card, and it makes you a sovereign citizen, which exempts you from taxes. You spend a weekend on an American reservation. So I'm telling the truth. I'm being serious here, even though I'm silly sometimes. But Christopher Columbus, we don't talk about the fact that I just did a project or did a paper in one of my classes on the founders of the U.S. And there was a group of murderers, rapists, and killers who were sent here to the U.S. from Europe. And they were part of the founders. Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk
founders? They were terrorists. They were terrorists. That's called.
They were terrorists.
You can't find something that was already owned. So the natives, they own. They were already here last I looked.
Well, how can you found a country that was already found? Why don't we talk about the book, The History Before the Mayflower, where they talk about how everything started in South America, and in South America, the brown and black people looked like gods and goddesses. They were deities, and there were statues made. Why don't we talk about that?
Because we're gonna take CRT out of the classroom. You know that. that wasn't in the first place. So, but anyway, I have to go to another thing, and I know you all have things to do. So let's continue this conversation. But any final thoughts? And we'll start with you, Mashante.
My final thought is thank you for having me on the Watch Dawgs, Carlton. I look forward to getting to know you better. And we really need to have more conversations like this in our community, because honestly, I was sitting there like, why am I going to do the Watch Dawgs show? I'm not running for office right now. Don't know if I want to run again. I'm not fighting for any social justice cause, because I think I'm dealing with compassion fatigue. But Robert asked me to be on the Watch Dawgs, so I'm going to be on the Watch Dawgs. And as I'm on this show, I'm very grateful for being able to be a voice for the community. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I think you offer so much wealth and just pure advocacy. I appreciate you. So seriously, Mr. Carlton, your final thoughts?
The one thing I was gonna say when you said earlier about why we don't have our own culture, we do. Our culture is just marketed as something else by another person, so that we can't lay claim to it. Because we'll start something and it'll go off and make a hit, and then this group of people takes credit for it. But other than that, I just want to say thank you for having me on. This is genuinely fun. It's just genuinely to go back and forth and have some witty banter with some people on this Saturday. Because I'm not gonna lie, probably more than likely after I would have got off work, I would have came home and turned on the TV. But instead of having an intellectual conversation with some other intellectuals, it's fun. But my main goal is to advocate for especially young African American men, which is why I did start my organization, to help them. And I might not sit there and say I'm out there every day, but usually while I'm just talking to them, especially the ones that I work with, it's just to inspire them and let them know, hey, this is your current destination. This is your current stop. This is not the final destination. I always continue to strive to do more. But thank you for having me on this afternoon.
And good to have you. I think this is a great path forward by adding you all, and the best is yet to come. And so my final thoughts are this: for the advocates out there, it's not easy work, as you said, Shantae. There's no manual for it, and you'll probably get more criticism than praise. Keep doing the work. And even for those, like Barack Obama said, even those who criticize you, still advocate for them too, because at the end of the day, your work benefits all. And in regard to life challenges, keep doing it. And for those who don't like it, keep doing it for them too. So y'all will be back next Saturday, same time, same place. We have 2 new permanent, underline that word, permanent co-hosts. So we will see y'all next week. Take care.
Wait, I got one more final thought after that, what you just said.
Ma'am. Yes,
because since you quoted Barack Obama, I want to quote Cardi B.
Go for it. I love it.
Stepping on their necks, room in their heads. In the words of Cardi.
So I tell you like that lady off TikTok, say, get somebody else to do it.
That part. Lord. All right. Well, we appreciate you all, especially the Cardi B piece. We will see y'all next Saturday. Take care.
I like that.